Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, taking a fun and exciting video for you guys today because Spaghetti Kart, the Mario Kart 64 PC port, has been updated to its 1.0 version of the game. And to say that this has a ton of new improvements that I'm going to be going over in the video would be an understatement. This kind of feels like the overall vibe of Spaghetti Kart finally hitting exactly what they wanted it to be. Now, of course, it is still in development. We're not saying 1.0 is final, but the amount of improvements and revisions here, including some of the actual enhancements on the graphical side of things, definitely make this a must upgrade. Because honestly, I absolutely love N64 decomps, recomps, and PC ports, and the fact that we have both a PC port as well as a recomp of Mario Kart 64, 10 out of 10 in my opinion. If we're getting too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. And obviously the N64 decomp, recomp, and PC port scene has been blowing up in the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026. I think you're going to see a lot more projects come to fruition this year for sure. And it's one of those things, I know we have both a recomp and a PC port of this game, and everyone always wants to know the differences, so I will do a video on that in the future. But as far as which one I would say is quote-unquote better is concerned, I do not compete fan developments in this channel. I am stoked that both of these things exist. They do have different feature sets and functionalities, so it's one of those things you can kind of play around with both and decide which one you like. And I will say when Spaghetti Kart first came out, it was a fun time, but there was definitely some freezing issues and some other growing pains. But that's just because the developers basically released the first working version and they think will be good for people to test, and then it gets improved from there. And obviously you don't give a 1.0 status to an update if you don't feel like it is very close to the overall focus of what you wanted the project to be. So if we move over to GitHub, you'll see Bolognese Alpha 1.0.0 is out as of yesterday as of recording this video, but do be aware, I do these things days in advance, so you'll probably see this maybe on the weekend or early next week, making this maybe 4 or 5 days old. And the list of what's changed is absolutely massive here. Some things are going to be under the hood improvements that you might not notice. Other things are going to be improvements or enhancements that you can play around with today, because trust me, this thing is absolutely loaded with fixes, including harder CPUs, because in the first version, I would say that maybe the CPU components were just a little bit too easy to beat. Now it's definitely going to be a lot harder for you if you want, but there's going to be options to basically turn rubber banding off as well if you kind of want to have a more quote-unquote fair Mario Kart 64 experience, because the rubber banding in this game is so incredibly hard, it'll absolutely explode a watermelon if you know what I mean. And as we go through here, you're going to see absolutely just getting decimated is the name of the game in Mario Kart 64, but this one is going to put the hurt to you even more. But honestly, we've all played Mario Kart 64 so many times, getting a more challenging version is going to be a fun thing if you want it. But the nice thing is a lot of these different changes are completely optional in the menu, which I will go over in a few minutes so you can decide for yourself what it is you want to use, what it is you don't want to use, so you can kind of have the exact Mario Kart 64 experience you would like. You'll see here I am playing it in widescreen, and I'm basically going 400% to the internal running resolution, but you can basically make this thing look like a 4x3 N64 game, just running at 60 frames per second or better on your PC. And that is the fun thing about all these recomps and PC ports. They give you the control over what sort of experience you want. You can dial it up as far as you can push it. You can basically have a near to stock experience. But going back to some of the other improvements under the hood, again, this list is pretty comprehensive. I'm not going to be going over every single one of them, but the frame interpolation has been completely overhauled, so you're going to get a smoother experience when you go to higher frame rates. And it's using interpolation because the game logic in Mario Kart 64 is going to be tied to its actual refresh rate. You see that on some N64 games that do not have an unlocked frame rate, so you have to interpolate the frames there. You'll also see they have significant podium ceremony graphic and improvements, and I will say I didn't really notice anything wrong with the original version, but they are here, so if you notice any sort of glitches or issues when you actually would get a trophy if you're good enough to win one. But if you were eagle-eyed there, you might see a frame of a random color basically popping in. It isn't perfect yet, but it is basically something if I didn't point it out you might not notice. Let's go to the first of 2 soundtrack samples because the sound has been improved here on Spaghetti Kart 1.0 as well. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with a lot more improvements. mean, that sounds exactly like Mario Kart 64 to me, but you and me comment down below and you tell me what you think. You're also going to see that there's been a lot of different bug fixes for items, multiplayer, battle mode crashes, and more, as well as some UI improvements, and you can now scale all the way up to 400% internal resolution. Now, do you need to do something like that? It just depends on what the resolution of your monitor is and what it is that you would actually like to get. But as you just listen to that soundtrack sample, you'll see there is a new audio driver. Now moving into the actual Spaghetti Kart menu here, you can see you can play around with the startup behavior of the actual game and have a bunch of other options as to how the game plays. But if you move into graphics, you're going to see here, you can move the internal running resolution all the way up to 400%, which for me at least on my site is an effective internal resolution of 8096 by 4320, which is absolutely massive and clearly higher than the 240p you would get back on N64. You can play around with the frame rate. I leave it at 60 because I find it to be the best, but you can jack that thing up to basically whatever you want. And you can see here you can have so many different options: no multiplayer feature cuts, widescreen portrait spacing, no level of detail loading, and whatever else it is you would like. Those are all subjective. You can pick whatever you want and go ahead and run with it. But honestly, when Spaghetti Kart first came out, it was a ton of fun, but people said that they wanted to see fixes and improvements come across because in some instances it wasn't working exactly perfectly like people expected. And on the 1.0 release, I would say I can't point to anything whatsoever that I thought was having an issue as far as actually running Mario Kart 64, and that really is definitely something that is impressive. And even though, like I said, we have a recomp as well, it's kind of fun to go back and forth and decide which version you prefer, or maybe you actually play both of them, because the best thing is Mario Kart 64 is still one of the best 4-player party games out there. So when you have a game night and you have friends over, maybe they have some nostalgia for Mario Kart 64 but aren't going to sit down at an N64 with a controller in their hand, you can pop this thing on and get them back into the game that they know, love, and remember. And you'll see here there's also just general performance, stability, and memory safety improvements. This will just basically run smoother, and I know a couple people had issues where the game would hang or crash. That should be completely out as well. So you'll see here whether you want it for Linux, Mac, ARM, or Intel, as well as Windows. You can grab whichever version you want. Obviously I test on Windows, but I did talk to a few people that tested on Linux, and they said everything was basically as solid as it was for me, because I usually ask people to kind of pop over to different OSs to see how things are going, so I can kind of talk to it about all of the different operating systems versus being Windows specific. And again, Mario Kart 64 is just a game that holds up, and we're absolutely being bombarded with Mario Kart improvements. In February, we have Mario Kart Wii Deluxe X out, as well as Mario Kart Retro Track GP on the Double Dash side of things. So whatever your favorite Mario Kart game is, odds are it either got a PC port improvement in February or it got a brand new fan game with a ton more tracks. Let's do one more soundtrack sample, because again the entire audio engine has been swapped out in Spaghetti 1.0. So go ahead and listen, get a sense of how the audio sounds, but come back because I got a few more things to talk about before we close out the video. I mean, I just love the fact that in 2026 we have so many different ways to play some classic N64 games, and it isn't just Mario Kart 64 that has both a PC port as well as a recomp. We're seeing that happen in different instances, and just so you know, I will have a video shortly, probably sometime later this week, that explains the exact difference between static recomps and PC ports, because they get used interchangeably, because of course both end up in the same result. Having an executable you can double click on your PC to play N64 games in a modern way, but under the engine and hood it basically has a completely different way of doing things, one based upon a decomp and one not. So we'll definitely be going into that in the future, but trust me, if you've been playing Spaghetti Kart and you haven't updated to the 1.0 version of the game yet, you owe it to yourself to do so, because it is just a better version than any of the other ones, and it's definitely a ton improved. But short of that, keep on racing, try to grab the red shells, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye bye.